The day I became the most hated man in Lakeside Estates was the same day I gained my greatest power. $500. That's what Carl Wellington, HOA president, charged me for fishing with my grieving son. What they didn't know was that I had 4 million reasons to fight back and enough spite to unleash every single one of them. If you're watching this video from your phone in the bathroom, trying to escape a ridiculous HOA meeting, drop a comment right now telling me where you're hiding. I promise this story will grip you. My name is Remy Thorncraft, and until 2 months ago, I was leading what many would call the American dream. After 15 years building a career in venture capital and financial investment, I sold my stakes in various tech startups for enough money to retire at 42. But life has a way of reminding you that money isn't everything. My wife, Rachel, lost her battle with cancer last year, leaving me to raise our 14-year-old son, Jonas, on my own. The grief nearly destroyed us both. The only thing that seemed to help was fishing, the last activity we'd enjoyed as a family before Rachel's health took its final turn. So, when I decided we needed a fresh start, I specifically looked for a home near water, somewhere peaceful where we could heal. Lakeside Estates seemed perfect on paper. Upscale homes, good schools, and a picturesque 6-acre lake nestled in the center. The realtor mentioned the homeowners association, but assured me it was just the standard stuff. Lawn maintenance, exterior paint colors, the usual. I should have read between the lines when he hesitated before adding, Carl Wellington is passionate about maintaining property values. I brushed it off. I had dealt with difficult personalities before. How bad could one neighborhood bureaucrat be? I quickly found out, as I stood on the small wooden dock, that quiet Saturday morning in April. Jonas and I had been fishing for an hour, his enthusiasm infectious, as he proudly displayed the bluegill he'd just caught. But then I heard a sharp voice slice through our peaceful attempts at healing. "Excuse me, what exactly do you think you're doing?" The woman approaching us was neatly dressed in what looked like expensive athleisure wear, her highlighted hair styled perfectly. She carried a tablet and wore an expression that suggested she thought we were vandalizing public property. "Good morning," I replied, trying to keep my tone friendly. "Just enjoying some fishing with my son. I'm Remy Thorncraft. We recently moved into the Sycamore Drive house." Ignoring my extended hand, she tapped aggressively on her tablet. "Mr. Thorncraft, fishing is explicitly prohibited in our community lake. This is a direct violation of HOA regulations. I'm Carl Wellington, the HOA president." She said this as if announcing her royal title. "I have to issue a violation notice. The fine is $500. I felt my heart drop, and Jonas froze next to me. "There must be some mistake," I protested, keeping my tone even. The realtor specifically mentioned fishing as a community amenity. It was a selling point for us. Carl's thin, smug smile didn't reach her eyes. The regulation was amended last month. Every resident was notified by email. My frustration boiled over. We never received any notification about this. "I oversee all communications personally," she said, as if seasoned in dealing with insubordinate residents. The email was sent to every household. "Check your spam folder, Mr. Thorncraft. Ignorance doesn't exempt you from following the rules." May I ask why fishing was suddenly banned? I couldn't hold back anymore. Why take something away that so many families enjoyed? Environmental and safety concerns. We've had complaints about the smell of fish and bait disturbing residents trying to enjoy the lake views, she replied coldly, her eyes flicking disdainfully at our modest tackle box. I took a deep breath. "We practice catch and release and clean up after ourselves. Can you at least give us a break?" Her expression hardened. "You clearly don't understand how things work here in Lakeside Estates. We maintain certain standards in our community. This isn't a public fishing hole." Jonas looked at me, his eyes teary. This was supposed to be our healing place, where for just a moment he could forget about his mother. "We'll pack up," I said quietly, wrapping an arm around Jonas. "Please email me the details of the fine and the full updated regulations." As Carl walked away, triumphant in her small victory, I felt as if I'd been sucker punched. Why was that lady so mean? Jonas asked, wiping his eyes. "We weren't hurting anyone." "Some people just like rules more than they like people, kiddo." I replied, trying to suppress my own anger. Let's head home. Later that evening, after digging through my emails, including spam, I found no notification about this phishing ban. Fueled by anger and confusion, I dove into researching our HOA. What I discovered was alarming. Carl Wellington had been HOA president for 8 consecutive years. Her day job? Owner of a small but exclusive real estate company specializing in community properties. I scrolled through social media posts from Carl herself, proudly hosting gatherings at the same lake where she found me. Many events featured alcohol and loud music, conveniently exempt from community standards. More importantly, I uncovered a clause buried deep in the HOA documentation. The lake was registered as common property amenity owned by all residents. There was no legal distinction indicating the HOA had absolute control. As I looked out the window toward the lake that evening, I saw Carl and a group of friends at the lakeside gazebo, laughing with beverages in hand. I could practically feel the fire igniting in my gut. So they want to play the rules game? I murmured to myself. Fine. First, I need to find out who actually owns this piece of water. The following morning, I ran into an elderly gentleman walking his dog past my house. He introduced himself as Merrick Henderson, a retired attorney living 3 doors down. When I mentioned my encounter with Carl, his friendly expression changed. "Oh, you've met our neighborhood dictator," he said, grimacing. "Let me guess. She quoted some ridiculous regulation and issued a fine?" I nodded, and Merrick shook his head. "Carl's been running this place like a personal fiefdom for years. Most people just pay the fines to avoid her wrath." With conspiratorial glance, he added, "If you're interested in background information, why don't you come by for coffee sometime? I've got quite a collection of HOA horror stories." I accepted his invitation the very same day. Merrick's home was filled with law books and framed photographs, presumably of former colleagues. As we sipped exceptionally strong coffee, he revealed something staggering. "The lake isn't owned by the HOA," he explained, producing a folder filled with documents. "It belongs to Meridian Development Corporation, the original developers. They lease recreational rights to the HOA for 30 years. Carl and the board can set usage rules, but it expires in less than 2 months." I sat up straighter. "What happens then?" "Meridian could choose to renew the lease, sell the lake to the HOA, or find another buyer entirely. But here's the twist. I've heard from my contacts that Meridian is facing financial troubles and may be looking to liquidate assets quickly, and I bet our friend Carl knows it." In the days that followed, with Merrick's help, I uncovered more alarming truths. Carl was secretly acquiring properties in our community through various LLCs, while finding others into submission. Now she had her sights set on the lake itself. I think she plans to reduce lake access and build luxury homes along part of the shoreline, Merrick concluded. The sudden fishing ban? It's not about protecting the environment. It's a tactic to restrict lake use in preparation for her profitable development project. My blood burned, not just for me, but for Jonas, for all the families harmed by her bureaucratic reign. With that resentment bubbling over, I knew it was time to gather allies. "Let's organize," I said, my determination growing. It's time to stand against this tyrant. And oh, it would be worth the fight. In the days that followed, fueled by anger and a thirst for justice, Merrick and I sprang into action. We gathered information about Carl Wellington and her own financial struggles, while subtly reaching out to neighbors who might be willing to join our cause. "Listen, we need to talk to people who felt her heavy hand," I told Merrick one evening in his cozy kitchen. "There must be others who suffered under her reign." Merrick nodded, eyes gleaming with approval. "Most people are afraid to speak up, but if we can show them they're not alone, I'll create a secure messaging group. We can share experiences without fear of retaliation," I suggested, my mind racing. Every moment counted, especially with the lease expiration looming. The next evening, sitting at my kitchen table, I typed out an invitation that felt like throwing a lifeline into murky waters. "If you're tired of the HOA's heavy-handed tactics, join our confidential group. We're pooling stories, experiences, and evidence against Carl Wellington." Within days, the responses flooded in. I quickly learned that Carl wasn't just a petty tyrant. She was a puppet master with strings tied tightly around the community's necks. One night, I met with Jonas at the dock after a long day of strategizing. "How's school?" I asked. Try to keep our conversation light amid the chaos. "It's fine, Dad, but some kids are saying I'm a troublemaker." His voice cracked slightly, understandably hurt. "Who told you that?" "Brianna's mom said we're trying to ruin the neighborhood or something." I clenched my fists, joining the series of new violations piling up on my to-do list, each more ridiculous than the last. "Just ignore them, buddy. They don't understand what's really at stake here." But even as I reassured him, doubts crept into my mind. What if Carl's pressure tactics got worse? The very next day, I received an anonymous tip during lunch at a local cafe. A message slipped into my hands. "Carl is holding an emergency board meeting tonight. It's about you." I leaned in, heart racing. I need to see what they plan to do. I gathered Merrick and two more allies, Samuel Washington, a respected banker in our community, and Linda, a fierce local teacher with a reputation for standing up to bullies. We huddled together at my dining room table, conspiratorially planning our next move. "This is a chance to go on the offensive," I said, adrenaline coursing through me. "We need to show up at that meeting." "But it'll just be the board." Linda shrugged, her brow furrowed. "They'll kick us out." "Exactly," I replied, snapping my fingers. "But we'll plant seeds of distrust among them. Carl can't control everything. We need to expose her." That night, we arrived at the community center, where the board meeting was held. I kept my head down to avoid recognition, but I could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut. As I listened, Carl spoke with her usual self-assuredness. "We need to stay vigilant in maintaining our community's standards against a certain disruptive resident," she declared, her gaze scanning the room. I squirmed in my seat, the weight of her accusation hanging dangerously between us. "Her financial irresponsibility will hurt property values," she continued, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "We must remind everyone here what's at stake." Merrick leaned over to whisper, "She's setting you up as the scapegoat." I felt the anger bubbling beneath my skin. Samuel adjusted his glasses, inquiry evident on his face. "More importantly, what's your plan for the lake, Carl? Are we giving up on the community's amenities?" She waved him off, clearly frustrated by the questioning. "The lake's resources will be dedicated to developing a sustainable community space," she promised, her smile faltering under the pressure. "We're ensuring every resident benefits." At that moment, Linda stood up, her voice uncharacteristically steady. "And what about the families who love fishing?" Heads turned, looks of surprise sweeping across the room. "That's an activity prohibited by our guidelines, and for good reason," Carl replied dismissively. The murmurs rippled through the crowd like whispers of a looming storm. "Those rules don't keep people safe," I piped up, unable to contain myself. "They just line your pockets, Carl. We know about your secret dealings." Gasps echoed in the room. Carl's face paled. "How dare you?" she stammered, her throne of confidence crumbling. "Just waiting for the right moment, Carl." I replied, every eye now locked on her. As uncertainty flickered across her face, I leaned in further. "This isn't just about one man's rebellion. It's about a community standing against oppression." The room buzzed, energy crackling in the air. A once silent group now stirred, drawn to the fire in my voice. "I've talked to several residents," I continued, my pulse quickening. "You're not the guardian of our values, Carl. You've undermined them for your benefit." In a fit of rage, she swung around, pointing. "This is a lie. I run this HOA." A voice from the crowd shouted. "Then why are property values dropping?" Carl tensed, her fingers curling into a fist as she shot back. "You'll regret this, Remy." But the seeds were sown. People were rising, emboldened by my words, starting to question, was there truth behind the rumors? We left the meeting that night with a surge of hope battling the anxiety bubbling in my gut. But I knew it was just the beginning. The fight had only just begun, and Carl wasn't going to take this lying down. One by one, I planned to approach my neighbors, armed with evidence against her, but I needed a solid game plan for the fight ahead. Just as we turned the corner toward my car, my phone buzzed, a new message from an unknown number. Carl's making a move soon. You don't have much time. Watch your back. I exchanged glances with my allies, adrenaline pulsing through us. This was far from over. If anything, the true battle was just about to commence. The night after the board meeting felt dense with tension, our small victory leaving a bitter aftertaste. I leaned against my car, staring at the flickering parking lot light, replaying Carl's face in my mind. The shock, the rage. She wouldn't take the challenge lightly. Do you think she'll retaliate? Merrick asked, breaking my contemplative silence. She'll strike hard and fast, I said, clenching my fists, but we're ready. Just as those words left my mouth, my phone buzzed again, a new message from the unknown number. Meet me at the old boathouse at midnight. It's urgent. You need to know. Who is it? Samuel asked, watching me closely. I don't know, I admitted, my heart racing. But I can't ignore this. I'll come with you, Merrick said, determination etched on his face. We drove in silence to the secluded boathouse, where the moonlight bounced off the still water. I took a deep breath before stepping inside, my pulse quickening with every step deeper into the shadows. The place was dark, the smell of damp wood and forgotten memories heavy in the air. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, an older man with a nervous twitch, familiar yet unrecognizable. Who are you? I demanded, the hairs on my neck prickling. Ralph, he stammered, glancing around nervously. I used to work for Meridian Development. I have information about Carl. How do I know I can trust you? I shot back. Because I saw it too, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. Carl is planning to bypass the agreement on the lake. She wants to develop it immediately. I overheard her. She's working with some guys who've been involved in shady deals before. Merrick and Samuel exchanged worried glances. What did you hear, Ralph? I pressed, my urgency growing. They're going to hold a secret meeting tonight at the community center, Ralph explained, worry evident on his face. There will be investors, and they're all counting on Carl to deliver that lake. I felt the blood drain from my face. If they buy the right to develop, everything could change. Our fight would be over before it begins. Exactly, Ralph said, panic in his eyes. You're running out of time. I've been trying to find a way to get this information to someone who could stop it. Let's go, I urged, adrenaline spiking. We need to crash that meeting. We raced back to the community center, adrenaline coursing through us. As we arrived, voices drifted to the cracked door. Carl's unmistakable tone leading a discussion on community enhancements. We exchanged determined looks. Let's go in now, I whispered. We have to stop her before it's too late. We burst through the door and all eyes turned toward us. The sight was chilling. Carl standing in front of a table filled with schematics, numbers, and brochures. Investors sat expectantly, confusion flickering in their eyes as they took in our unexpected intrusion. What is the meaning of this? Carl snarled. This is about to be your final meeting, Carl. I declared, projecting confidence I didn't feel. We know everything. Gasps erupted from those present, and I pressed on. Ralph here worked for Meridian. He overheard your plans to develop our lake, selling out our community for personal gain. What nonsense. Carl spat, but her composure was slipping. Those aren't just papers, they're contracts. Merrick pointed at the documents scattered across the table. You're risking everything without the community's knowledge. You're making backdoor deals. The room murmured, tension mounting. Is this true, Carl? One of the investors finally asked, a frown settling on his face. Carl exhaled sharply. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it? I stepped closer, my heart hammering. Are you putting our lake at risk for your profit? Incompetent blathering, she spat, raising a hand dismissively, but the clamoring voices around us grew louder. Enough, shouted a hefty businessman. This is a deal we need to know about, and you've manipulated us this entire time, haven't you? Carl's eyes lit with fury, but she couldn't mask the fear lurking behind them. I did what was necessary for our community. Necessary. I challenged. You exploited us. You've used petty rules to drive families out. Suddenly, with a swift move, she shushed the crowd, eyes narrowing at me. You fool! You think you can challenge me? I'll destroy you. Not if we expose your schemes first, I countered, raising my voice above the roar of dissent brewing in the room. You're finished. As the tide turned against her, a voice piped up from the corner. Maybe it's time to vote out the leadership, starting with you, Carl. More voices joined in, and soon a chorus of support roared through the room, demanding greater accountability. Fearlessly, I took the opportunity of their confusion. Let's not kid ourselves. Carl Wellington has used us, manipulated our rules, and is set on ruining our future. But together, we can refuse her. We can vote to dissolve this board. Samuel grabbed a stack of flyers from the table containing signatures of disgruntled residents and held them high. This is our petition for change. A few investors remained doubtful, but the tide was shifting. We cannot be intimidated. I declared, we have the power to redefine our community. In that chaotic moment, Carl's facade crumbled and terror flickered across her face. You'll regret this, she hissed, voice low and menacing. Just as a commotion erupted into fervor, a police officer burst through the door, clearly alerted by the noise. What's happening here? All eyes turned quickly toward Carl, her betrayal evident. I was just briefing them on community regulations, she stammered. Your community regulations? I interjected, adrenaline surging. More like ruthless manipulation to profit off our property. The officer raised an eyebrow. Is that true? Carl's bravado had vanished, and as her eyes darted around the room searching for an escape, I pressed on. We all deserve better. This is our lake, a community treasure, not to be sold for profit. In the escalating tumult, the officer strode toward Carl. I need to ask you some questions. Desperation overtook her cool demeanor. This isn't over. I will take all of you down. As she was led away, the air felt thick with unshed tension, but momentum was on our side. The remaining board members looked around, unsure of their footing. The investors who had initially marched in with disbelief now stood perplexed, seeing her for who she truly was, an opportunist looking to line her pockets at our expense. Turning back, I found my allies beaming not just with relief, but with a sense of purpose. How's that for a community meeting? Merrick grinned, triumphant. As the dust settled, a sense of change washed over us all. I glanced at Jonas, who had slipped in quietly, witnessing his father's courageous stand. He smiled at me, his eyes bright and alive. Standing in the same room where Carl had attempted to tear us apart, I realized something profound. We had not just reserved our lake, but ignited a force for change that would ripple through lakeside estates. The next morning, I received a message, a public announcement that the HOA had been dissolved and the community's new leadership will begin building a more transparent, inclusive future starting with a community trust to protect our lake. As I sat by the water with Jonas that afternoon, the sound of laughter filled the air, children learning to fish, families reunited. I caught a glimpse of Carl Wellington's empty seat at the governance table, and satisfaction surged through me. Even as she tried to rise from the ashes of this defeat, I knew in my heart that the community would never let it happen again. Justice had prevailed, and together we had created something beautiful out of the chaos, a place where families thrived, where laughter filled the air, and where the lake sparkled with promise for generations to come. As I turned to my son, his eyes lit with joy, I realized the greatest victory wasn't just reclaiming our lake. It was the spirit community we had reignited, a reminder that standing together can topple even the mightiest of foes. And as I watched the sun dip below the horizon, an ember of hope ignited within my chest, an unyielding flame that whispered, "This is just the beginning."